Hey, hi everyone. Welcome back to part two. In this quick look at getting a logo into some sort of format that we can print up onto a t-shirt. Okay, so last lesson we had a look at just opening Illustrator, creating an A4 document, looking around to find an image that we could trace, and we had a quick look at where to find fonts and you know get things starting to happen in our software. Okay, so we're going to start to work a little bit more with type and colors now, and uh, and layout a little bit more as well. Okay, so first things first. Once you get some type, set some type. Start to experiment with how the type looks. Okay. Now, one of the things, excuse me, that when we're in Illustrator, if we select our type, and we've got the ability to now actually we're here in our we've got our basic type up here, but Illustrator for hides away its type controls down here. So under window you come right down to type and we'll go character. Okay, and it'll bring up this little flyer, and this is pretty handy. Okay, so we've got a few things here, but one of the things that I really like here is that we can crank out our type. We can start to get a little bit interesting as far as spacing out our letters go. This is kind of like slightly science fiction looking, so you can see it maxes out at 200 as far as our kerning goes, but we might say stick this up to 600, and that'll give us like a, gives us this kind of like slightly Japanese, technology kind of looking font. It's a little bit cyberpunk, I suppose, in style. So experiment with that. Try squishing your font up a lot. Just you can just roll through these and see what it gives you. You can also, another thing that you can have an experiment with is creating type blocks, and I do this quite a bit. I remember when I used to work as a graphic designer, I used to love these like car ads from Melbourne, which were like probably considered the worst graphic design, but they used to just jam in the most text, and I kind of like that. So what I often do is I'll grab a bit of type like that. I'm pretty happy with the spacing of the letters and everything else. I could bring that in just attached, but I won't bother too much at the moment. What you can do is I often just go type, create outlines. So there's no longer a font controlling this font. It's become controlling this type. It's become pure curves. So what I can do is I can ungroup that, which is Shift Command G, or you can also find it under Object Ungroup up here if you've got the object selected. But I just want to grab that bit of type. So the tofu I'm going to join together, and binary I'm going to join together as well. So once I've got that, I'll often then just take the type, jam it underneath, and then I'll bring it up, and I'll bring it up to the same sort of size as the other piece of type, and that can create, an interesting kind of like block of type. And sometimes things just fall together nicely that way. So yeah, it's something to experiment with. We might have a look later on at working with that. But for the moment, I'm going to keep this kind of quite linear style, just so that we can see some of the options that we can work with this type. Now, one of the things that really, I suppose, sets Illustrator and people that work in Illustrator apart from the people that are slogging it out in the office using Microsoft Office is that we've got a lot more control over the way things work. But also, we've got some good quick effects as well that are actually look decent. So one of the things is we've got this warp here, and this is kind of, I don't mind this. So we can go like arc upper, we've got upper, lower. So or a full arc. So a full arc is not too bad. So that we can just turn it on the preview. Okay, and we can see just really quickly, it gives us quite a reasonable sort of arc to our text. A little bit of stretching around the U there. That's a little bit noticeable, but it's not too bad. We can change the amount of band. Okay, so it's kind of like quite easy to work with. and you can go, crazy, go vertical. And we can also kind of like change and warp that as well. So, well, it's looking pretty like savage early 90s kind of at the moment. It's a bit bizarre. It's pretty harsh, I think, with that black and white as well, but that's cool. So we'll take those back to zero. That's better, and we'll take this just down to a kind of, oops, okay, so we don't want to warp it too radically like that, but that's not too bad. Okay, so if we wanted some sort of text over the top, and one of the things with that is because it's still type, we can still change it, and it kind of like, it sort of retunes it. Okay, so we can move it around. Now, one of the things you can see with this is our original bit of type down here, but as far as the preview, it looks like this. Okay, so it's a bit like what we had earlier when we looked at the image that we traced, and we couldn't really see it in wireframe mode. This is a bit the same. If we look in wireframe mode, we can see the type, but we can't see the effect of the image. But with Illustrator, whenever we go expand appearance, it makes the vectors basically conform to what we see on screen. So we go expand appearance like that. So now if we go Command Y, we can see that type sort of hovering over the top. So that was an easy bit of type work there. Let's have a look at some other type. We can, under effects, there's plenty in these warps actually. But the shell lower, it's probably worth knowing about. The shell lower lets you, keep sort of like a flat upper or lower, depending on which one you got. And then you can kind of like bend it all crazy out of proportion there. So that's a bit of fun there. And you can, sometimes it's good just for like not going too far, but just kind of custom tweaking it just a little bit. It can be a good way to go. But I'm just going to go cancel for the moment. I just wanted you to know that. Okay, another classic in the logo department is often we see logos that are self-contained sort of rondelle styles. So I like this one. Okay, so this has got a homage to a sort of 80s style logo, and one of the things you can see, like signwriters used to make these lines that they would put their lettering onto. They might have painted the lettering on, or they might have used Letraset as well. So this has got your rondelle, your sort of round kind of graphic that encloses the graphics within it. On your logos and your type, and it's also then you can have this sort of dynamic breakout where it's sort of things are moving in and out of that contained space. So we've got like the car here driving into it, and we've got the type sort of dynamically coming out of it. So I mean, that's the big thing that's missing. That's looking a bit more interesting, a bit more dynamic. This is looking like your local kind of like club enthusiast. It's sort of getting the job done, but it's not really communicating a lot of excitement, except for maybe the people that like P76s. Maybe just an image of a P76 is enough to get them excited, but I don't know if there's many of them around. And okay, so that's where it's at. We need to add a bit more excitement to this. Now, if we want to get into the rondelle types of shapes, the other thing we can do is we can create type on a path. Okay, and it's pretty easy. We just can come across here to our circle, and we can grab a circle, okay, and we can just like, if you hold down shift as you drag it out, it'll always conform to the shape you want. You can also like grab the circle tool and click once, and it'll ask you for a size, but who knows how big things need to be when you're working graphically. If you're working accurately for some other project, that's cool, but I just like the standard sort of, just cancel that. I just like to drag out a circle and get it looking about the right size. Okay, Oops, I added the second one. Come over here to our type. Now, so what I usually do in this order is I come across, I'll make this just full screen, so it's getting rid of my browser there. I'll come across, I'll select myself a bit of type. That's cool. Okay, I'll come back across and I'll come to this circle. Now you can see I've got above one that I did before. And I'll tell you why in a sec. Grab my type on a path tool and I just click somewhere, okay, and it adds my type. And so what we're going to do is I'm just going to go Command V and type, pop my type in there and it's all good. Okay, now one of the things when you're working with type on a path is we can move the type around and we can also flip it over so it's on the inside or the outside. One of the things that Illustrator has been extremely consistent with over the years is it's got actually the worst controls for moving that type on a path that anyone's ever seen. How it is so consistently bad, I've no idea, but it's absolutely terrible. And you've got to mess around here, moving these lines around until you get one of these things, okay? Which is like a line here, which we can then grab and we can move it around, okay? And you just keep messing around with these couple here until you get them working. This one here may actually just do the trick. It does, okay? So it's after the type. Yeah, why they can't build a decent handle for this, look, it's just beyond me. It's not like they're giving away the software for free. Adobe, for God's sake, get someone to have a look at that. Okay, just put a label or a handle or something on it. Okay, so anyway, let's stop complaining and get back into the action. So I've got my bit of type on a path here, and I just hover over that stick until I get sort of the look that I'm after. Okay, so I'm just getting, oops, I don't want to flip it, I just want to get it something like that. Okay, that's pretty cool, that'll do. And you can see the difference between these two types here. So this one has got a lot of curve, and the letters curve, conform closely to the circle. Whereas when we did the arc was sort of quite loose, and there's a little bit of flaring of the letters and compressing. Look at that A; it's just kind of like a little bit out of whack. It's not too bad, but compared with this A here, it's pretty. This A is a lot better. So that's kind of the pros and cons of those two. This one's easy to muck about with. This one gives you a bit better control, and you can wrap it around different shapes as well. So look, this one's quick tool, turns out okay. This one, is like takes a bit longer to use, a little bit higher frustration levels, but the result is generally better, I think. Okay, so we're starting to get here a few different types of text layout, and it's looking pretty good. So that's cool. But we're still really lacking a kind of cohesive look to the logo or a cohesive layout to the logo. Yeah, so that's okay. So we're starting to bring our components together. So the first thing that we might do here is just move all this stuff over here. That's cool. And bring in our bit of type. That's cool. We'll get that happening. We've only really got one bit of type that I've actually thought about using. I hadn't been particularly, I'm doing it. I'm shooting from the hip as far as putting this logo together goes, because I think that's the best way, is that you can see that it always takes a bit of effort to pull things together. Okay. So let's create a circle. If you hold down Option and Shift is another way we can create a circle, and that drags it out from the middle. So if I started just holding Shift, you can see it dragged from the corner of where I started to the corner of where I finish. But if I hold down Option, it kind of comes out from the center. Okay, that's cool. So we've got ourselves a bit of a logo here. It's got a black fill and no stroke on it at the moment. Okay, so down here we can see this is showing us the fill. It's all solid, this little square here, and the stroke is the like square donut with a stroke through it. And that's saying, yeah, we haven't got anything. So you can actually swap those over pretty easy just by clicking on this swap over button, and that gives us control over that piece of work. So what I'm going to do is just drag that over. That's cool. I'm just going to center that just a little bit, and I might just grab both of those elements and just scale them down. Always using shift when I scale. In Illustrator is the way to go. Okay, so we've got that type kind of set within something. So I might copy that. And I'm a big fan of like pasting in place as well. So I'll go like Shift Command V, paste in place, and it pastes directly over the top. And then we can scale that down, and it's going to wobbly. So we hold Shift, conforms the shape. And just like when we laid it out before, if I hold down Option, it'll scale around the center point. Okay, so it makes it a little bit easier to create concentric circles. Okay, so we can copy that, and we've got ourselves a bit of a kind of rondelle donut sort of thing. Okay, we might choose to replicate those. Oops, Command C. Command Shift V. So the shift means stick it in place, and we might pull this out a little bit. Okay, and we might give us a couple of those painted sort of lines a bit later on. And I'll Command C that one just for the practice, and Shift Command V, and I'll paste into place. And now I'm going to drag that one out there, and I'll sort of like set those as a bit like guidelines for the type. They're not exact at the moment, and they're a little bit heavy, but that's okay. We'll tune those up with our stroke width as we go along. So let's have a look at this stroke width on this one. So we click on this inside one. At the moment it's set at 0.652. So I always use stroke to set my point size. A 1 point line looks kind of like okay. Anything above a 1 point line is starting to look chunky. Okay, so it's kind of like if you're making stuff chunky, go up a bit. Don't muck about. Get some chunky tones there. So 6 point. I didn't even see what I was doing on that one. That's 5 points. So let's just take it up. Okay. A couple of things here. We've got uniform. We can make it kind of like we can muck about with the way that the width is applied, and also the kind of like shape of things. So we can tune that up a little bit more as we go along. Okay, so we're starting to get our rondelle starting to happen, and then we can start to maybe get our logo here, and we can jam it on top. Okay, so now we're starting to get something that's a bit more sort of interesting. And we can start to experiment with how it works. Okay, so that's not sitting too bad. We are missing the boot of our car, but we can draw that in a little bit. And let's have a look. So I'm going to grab my type. Here we go. Type on a line. I'm looking for that little stick, and I can just sort of tune this type now, because a lot of these sort of like logos tend to be a little bit asymmetrical as you pull them together. So I can just make that type run around without sort of touching the car. So that's cool. That's looking good. We've got a few issues with this. We'll make sure it's on the front. So it looks like at the moment some of these stripes like are running in front of the car. So we can bring it to the front. So we can go Object, Arrange, bring the front. That's cool. Other way we can do it is we can use our square brackets as well, and that'll move things backwards and forwards. So like anything in Adobe, pretty good. We can go Arrange, bring to front. We can say Shift, Command, square bracket brings it all the way to the front. Whereas bring forward is your command bracket that just brings you one step at a time, okay? So it's a bit like you're dealing with this sort of vertical stack of jigsaw puzzle style pieces almost that we're dealing with. Okay, so that's pretty good. So we're starting to get, you can see here now the lines aren't running through these white panels. It's starting to look a bit better, I think. We've got a little bit of tuning here to do. So what can we see is that this type isn't super well centered in this logo anymore. So I'm just actually gonna just upsize the logo a bit, and I'm going to sort of run it a bit between those guide rails. So even though we're working digitally, it's good to have some of those original tools that, you know, were used by the graphic designer / sign writers of yore. Okay, so that is starting to look better, I think. Yeah, okay. We haven't got colour yet, okay, so we're just purely working on the shape and the form. What else have we got happening here? I'm not loving the way that this, see how this shadow's projecting a long way out on this side? I think that's a little bit problematic. Good way to do that is I'm just going to draw around. Ooh, actually, that's a bit ugly. I might just sort of start to delete a few of those points out of the mesh there by using my white tool, which is my white arrow, A to select that one. Let's zoom in here, have a bit of a look. Yeah, that's cool. I'm just gonna grab that one. I'm gonna just drag these back to the circle, okay? And that is good. I'm pretty happy with that, okay, at the moment. So I'm gonna keep it working. And yeah, so I think the logo is starting to come together. What I'll do is I'll stop now, come back, we'll set a bit more type, and then we'll start setting some colors and adding a little bit of flavor to the line work, and we'll be on our way. All right, so I'll see ya